This is the GoPro Hero 9. It was released in 2020, but is it still a good camera in 2024? When we take a look at the build quality of the Hero 9 Black, it is really well built in my opinion. It is small, compact, but keep in mind that it does have two screens, so that makes it a little bit easier for it to break. And the nice thing about most GoPros is that they have a removable lens cover, which means that if you do break the lens, you can just get a new cover for it, so you don't have to worry about scratching up your lens. And it only has two buttons on the camera, and if you want to change settings, you have to do that through the app or the touchscreen. And it has a nice grip, however it isn't really comfortable for holding for longer periods of time, which means you probably want to attach it to something like a small grip. But holding it like this also works completely fine. It also has these foldable mounting fingers, which I think is pretty nice to have, so they aren't really in your way when you are using it. But what is annoying is that they don't have a 1/4 inch 20 here, which means that you can't mount it to normal camera tripods, or you have to get an adapter. But when you get an adapter for this thing, then you can't easily put it in your pocket again. And when I think of a good vlogging camera, I need one that has great stabilization, good low light performance, nice colors, good audio quality, and can fit in a pocket, and it checks most of the boxes, but definitely not all. For example, the low light of this GoPro isn't good at all. It doesn't even have to be low light, but when it gets a little bit darker, you can already see the GoPro struggle a lot. I think this is one of the worst low light cameras that I've used. So for example, here's a clip when it was a cloudy day while being in the forest. And even though it wasn't low light, you can still see some noise, which is annoying. And for the great stabilization, it needs a lot of light because it's electronic image stabilization. So when you get to lower light conditions, then it will also really struggle with the stabilization, or you will get a lot of noise. And if you keep it on, then you will get some weird artifacts which don't look nice at all. But controlling the camera is really easy with the touchscreen, and I like how many options you have on this thing. So you have a lot of resolution options, frame rates to choose from. But not only that, you can also choose the colors that you want out of the camera and the sharpness. Because I think the built-in sharpness in 1080p doesn't look that great, but I can just turn it down and get a better image, because it likes to put it on high, but I prefer medium or low. What's also nice is that it has this small front screen. Sadly, it isn't really big, and it will be a little bit choppy, so it will look like 3 FPS when using it. But it's so much better than having nothing, so you at least have something where you can frame your shot. But I do feel like having both screens on at the same time will drain your battery quicker. A good camera also has to be reliable, and sadly that isn't always the case for the Hero 9, according to people online. I haven't had that many issues with it. I only had an issue once where it didn't want to read my SD card, and I had to turn it off, turn it back on again, and then it worked. But even though it only happened once to me, that still isn't nice that it happened. And I've heard people talk about it freezing up, especially at higher resolutions and frame rates. And I've also heard a lot of people talk about slow menu systems. But I think it's completely fine, and I think that's because they changed it with the update. But swiping through the menu system does work pretty smoothly most of the time. Yes, you have to wait for a second, but it's not extremely slow. The GoPro Hero 9 also has different lens options. So here's a sample of Superview. It captures the full 4x3 sensor and squeezes it into a 16:9 image. Then you have wide, which is just the normal wide angle GoPro look. When you go to linear, you will get lens correction distortion, so you won't get the fisheye effect, but keep in mind that it definitely does crop in a bit. There's also linear plus horizon leveling, so if you want to keep the horizon level, it will do that, but only up till a certain amount. And then last up is narrow, which does still give you a little bit of that GoPro look, and because it's so zoomed in, it isn't the sharpest. But at least it's nice that you have the option to quickly change between lenses in this camera. And what's also nice about the screens is that the brightness can go pretty bright. You can change it in the settings, so you can adjust it to what you like. For battery life, I've always turned the GPS and the app connection off, so it doesn't have any wireless connections, and sometimes I even turn off this front screen so you can get a better battery life. And it also really depends on which modes you shoot in. So for example, in 1080p 25 FPS, you should probably be able to get about 1.5 hours, maybe even 2. But when you start to get into 4K or 5K, it drains the battery quicker. And when we take a look at the video quality of the Hero 9 in 2024, you can still get some nice images out of it. When you shoot in 1080p on the Hero 9, I do feel like it has less detail compared to most other 1080p cameras. And yes, you can turn on the sharpness if you'd like to, but the sharpness in 1080p also doesn't look nice compared to other cameras. But when you switch to 4K or 5K, then you can definitely see that the sharpness looks a lot nicer. But I always had the issue that when I hit record, the audio sounded pretty bad, and then a few seconds after it turned back to normal again. So now we are at low sharpness 1080p at 25 FPS. It also has a hyperlapse feature called Timewarp, which works great. And it also has some really nice slow motion options. So 1080p at 240 FPS. When you are shooting in slow motion with the sharpness on, it looks like a cheap smartphone look. So that's why I turned the sharpness down. Keep in mind that this isn't a touchscreen here, but you can have them both set on at the same time. So should you still buy the Hero 9 in 2024? If you want a camera with good image quality and a lot of features with sharpness adjustments, nice colors, then this can still be a good option. But keep in mind its limitations. For example, that a lot of people out there say that the camera does like to freeze. I haven't had that issue, except when once the SD card wasn't working. And the low light of this camera is really bad. Even when it gets a little bit darker, it gets worse image quality. But in bright daylight, it can capture some really nice images. And do you already have a GoPro, or are you planning on buying the Hero 9? Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching.